I don't want to sound like a Karen. I don't even really fully know what that means. I'm just trying to spread awareness. So I have my first child in school. She's in kindergarten and she just brought home her first iPad. And I want you all to know that I took that aside and went into a place alone and found pornography within a couple minutes. And it was pretty easy. Now, when I say easy, I could tell that they have tried to make it safe and filter a lot of things out. Here's the thing, guys. Pornography is out to get your kids. It's out to get everybody. As is all products, right? Every time we're marketing things, we're trying to put things in people's faces on purpose, have them come across things they weren't even looking for. Like that's what ads are when you're on Facebook. Sometimes there's things you weren't even looking for, but they're there, whether they're good or bad. And so pornography, if it can get in front of people's faces when they're not even looking for it, then they can hijack this part of you that is built to be curious and built to want to be attracted to things, which none of that is bad, but they kind of exploit that part of you and then expose people to things that are shocking. And we as a society know we, for whatever reason, love shock value. And it's being deemed as possibly one of the most highly addictive things because people can't smell it on us. It doesn't make the same quickly noticeable changes in our behavior necessarily that we can tell and other people can tell, and we're really able to consume pornography and feel like we're not being changed. A couple of things about pornography, because I've studied pornography addiction. It's really not healthy for adults or children, but especially children, because they haven't developed a strong executive function, right? They are impulsive. They are literally being wired for what's right, what's wrong, what's normal. If porn had very loving, normalized, real life type content and that was it, it would still be kind of taking personal connection out of things, which we are seeing is already troublesome in just media in general and social media, right? Like kids, and science is proving that it is contributing to depression, suicidal feelings and thoughts. So pornography on the internet is still, even if it's the healthiest kind of like love and it's really realistic, it's still gonna have its issues. But unfortunately, we don't really even have a lot of that. Pornography is a fantasy world of things that often aren't healthy, aren't realistic, and now we can get this in front of kids' faces so young, addicted so young, and they're going to have a lot of issues when they grow up. And this is scientifically fact. Like they've done studies on what this does to brains, to children's brains. Go out there and find psychologists who have studied this and seen this. It's anywhere from damaging relationships in the future, damaging their own sex life, erectile dysfunctions, unsatisfied sex lives because it's not what they have dreamed up their whole pornography lives. Maybe they start out with a great marriage that they would never want to destroy, but they end up destroying because they end up cheating because they've spent this whole lifetime of years of being exposed to new after new after new girl, new person, new sex life. And, marriage doesn't exactly offer that. And it's really hard to have family life and a monogamous relationship sometimes. There's even psychologists who said, I only work with children who have raped or committed sex crimes. And they say, I want to harm people, but I don't know why I want to harm people. And then they kind of talk about the pornography they've been exposed to. And the thing about pornography is it's so sick. I mean, there's some really sick stuff out there that if we have internet in front of kids' faces, even if we're trying so hard not to and trying to protect them from the internet, like the fact that they can get on the internet even is really scary. It's like having an unlocked gun because there's stuff that is so violent, so vulgar, so demeaning, so objectifying. We are really dehumanizing humans. Is that what you want to do? Like have happening to your kid's brain? So you might think like, well, we can control this. Like your kid's bringing home an iPad, like take it away as soon as they get home. And for one, I'm just disturbed that, I didn't find any way that I could lock her iPad. The school has like the safety controls. Two, some of the games the teachers had set up on there were not just apps. You had to go on the internet to play them. Well, if you linked yourself up to Wi-Fi, the kid would then always have access to Wi-Fi. You could actually unjoin the network, but it wouldn't forget the password. So even though my kid might not be automatically logged into the internet, as soon as they know what is our Wi-Fi name, they can just click on it every time. Maybe there's some way to like clear your entire settings, clear your whole device, and then it would forget a password. But it wasn't like it was some simple like, hey, how about we just literally lock them out of the internet unless I type in a password every time. Aside from that, even if I could really protect her really well here at home, now all the kids around me are bringing home iPads. And I don't love that because I didn't used to have internet in my back pocket. My friends didn't used to have internet in their back pocket. So now anytime she goes to a friend's house, I have to be worried if they protect their kids as well as I do. And if they try to watch over these things as much as I do. And even that being said, none of us can watch our kids all the time. Like, there's parenting blogs all about the fact that like you're going to go crazy if you try to watch everything your kids do all the time. So internet in the home that's not locked all the time and your kids literally can't access it unless you unlock it is just not a good idea. We have computers that have passwords our kids just can't get into. They don't know it, and it's just how it is. Our TV doesn't have great settings to lock my kids out. Luckily, it's in a super visible area, but I don't love that. Aside from all this, I've heard of kids accessing porn at school on these devices. That's partly why I took the device right away and I went and did my own little experimentation and found it so quickly. So now I've got to send my kid to school knowing they all have these devices, but supposedly somebody is watching over all of them all the time to make sure they're not getting on this. That's not realistic. Now, I know that we're not supposed to put our kids in bubbles and that technology is good and they need to learn it. Like, I agree with that, and I don't put my kids in a bubble. I'm not trying to protect them from the whole world of, like, sex and their bodies. Like, I want to teach my kids all about their bodies and all about sex, and I've already started because I know that the possibility of exposure, this is another fact, kids are getting exposed to what sex is and pornography extremely young, so much younger than our generation. Like, it went from 14 to dropping to 12 fast to dropping to I've heard it's 8, and some people say it might be closer to 5 or 6 now. That is my kid's age. Like, that's so scary. So I have talked to my kids about stuff that we would have never dreamed we would need to talk to our kids about so young. And I'm happy to talk to my kids about it. I want them to not be afraid of sex, not be afraid of bodies, but I just want them to be educated from a healthy viewpoint. And to me, pornography is scientifically not a healthy point. I want to give them the most chance at successful relationships and a happy sex life someday. I want them to have realistic expectations. I don't want them to objectify themselves or others. I don't want them to dehumanize themselves or others, all for something that is kind of overhyped on its pleasure factor, Not that it's not great, but like we've really blown it up in society and we're really obsessed to an unhealthy point. So that aside, I'm sending my kid to school with all these devices, and I don't agree that this is a good thing. If this was a device that didn't have internet on it and it was just apps or educational, that would be one thing. If someone could prove to me that the controls were actually good enough to really keep them out, okay, that would be another thing too. But my thought is, I had computer class growing up, and technology was moving pretty fast even then. And by the time I went from who I was at 12 to who I was at 24, things had completely blown up of technology being everywhere and everything we use. Like, we weren't even using fax anymore, right? Like, that was old school. I went from dial-up that was so slow to like you click things and get them in an instant. And I worked in jobs where I had to do a lot of technology. I saw friends go off and become web developers, and people become graphic designers, all very tech savvy, who didn't have to have internet on a device that they were allowed to have most any time to learn technology. Why can technology just not be a class at school where computers are faced outward, that whoever is the teacher during that hour can see everything they're on at that moment, and you learn your techie things, and then you go back and you learn your other subjects without a phone or an iPad in your back pocket, and you don't need to bring that home. I don't buy my kids devices because I don't I think that they're like having an unlocked gun in your house. Guns aren't bad in my book. But if my kids are going to learn to shoot someday, and I think that's a good thing, however I feel about that, I'm definitely never leaving it unlocked, and I'm definitely never leaving them alone with that gun. That's how I feel about the internet. Like, I'm not going to leave them alone with the internet. I'm not going to risk it, and I want it locked up until then. Same thing with alcohol, right? Like, maybe someday as adults, if that's something they decide to do and I don't have that control, like maybe they'll learn to develop a healthy relationship around it. But kids who drink young, they prove that changes their brain. So we literally don't even sell alcohol or guns, to minors, and yet we don't have any great controls to make sure they don't access pornography. And when I say pornography is out to get your kids, they will continually change how they spell things, purposely spell it wrong, but kids will find out and they will spread it to each other. And so there's no amount of filtering that you can do to keep it out. The only way for the internet to be safe is with there to be an internet that's separate of the internet, developed just for children, and everything that goes on it is monitored so closely. And that would probably be something we'd have to pay for, because it would take a lot of manpower, and it would have a lot less things that could just be uploaded. It couldn't be like free upload of any moment from any person anywhere in the world. It would be very micromanaged, and I'm okay with that in an internet world for kids until they're ready for more exposure to whatever they want to after they're 18. Again, this might sound like you're putting your kids in a bubble, but we don't just expose them to alcohol all their lives. We don't just leave out guns. We don't need to pretend like all the garbage on the internet is just, it is what it is, and we have to be okay with it. I'm not okay with it, and I'm not okay that my kid brought home an iPad that I really never wanted her to have, and that I found that within a couple minutes. So I'll talk to my kids' school and school district and spread this awareness to you.